As brands move from bricks to clicks, Brand Aid provides expert resources and insights. Welcome to the Brand Aid video conversation. As I was sharing with you a client situation where one came up, and it's not quite as commonplace, but it still turned into an issue because of territorial rights. And then you mentioned earlier the issue of the internet, because one example that came to mind for me is, I happened to have purchased a camera from a New York camera store where they ship. Or, I don't know, I recently purchased something from Alltrek in Oregon, which is a fabulous outdoor store. They're not a nationwide chain. They're not in multiple states from a physical location, but they have a huge internet presence. They ship all over the United States. They have a website that's very interactive. They have shopping carts. It's really as big as looking at something like a Barney's or a Saks Fifth Avenue online. They have thousands of pieces of merchandise. So almost every item that's in the physical store is in the online store, or a good portion of it. So that raises the question of what are their territorial rights, right. And what impact does, distribution of products over the internet have for purposes of establishing trademark rights. Yeah.
It's a very difficult issue, and actually, interestingly enough, considering how long, if you will, the internet's been around now, 10, 15 years at least, with a lot of sales, maybe a little bit more, there's not been any crystal clear resolution of this in the courts. The courts have danced around the issue, looked at the specifics of the situation, but the Three Palms case we were talking about,
that's a very recent case.
Yeah, and the court, I'm not sure I actually agree with the decision. The court disregarded the fact, this is hotels, that hotels are booked by people nationwide on national sites like TripAdvisor and Expedia. Expedia will list all the hotels right next to each other. If you say, I want to go to a hotel in Scottsdale, Arizona, it'll give you all the Scottsdale hotels. I don't know if it is rightfully decided. I mean, you want to talk about the facts, or I can fill people in?
It was an interesting fact pattern because it goes back to an example of what we were just discussing, which is we had a senior user, the first to adopt and use the mark Three Palms in Scottsdale, correct, for hotel.
Right.
And he didn't register right away. I don't think
he's ever tried.
He never filed.
He might have finally filed when this whole thing
started,
after the controversy.
And I think it was
started.
Maybe from 2002, I don't know, fairly recently in the history of things. And then about 4 years later, there were some folks in Florida who adopted and started using, and they also started licensing the name and franchising. But interestingly enough, they still were only in 6 states. It wasn't as if they'd gone nationwide. Right. They were only in 6 states as of the date.
One of them being California, which is fairly close to Arizona, I guess. But to me, people book hotels online a lot now, mostly. And it's not, if you see in the old days, you saw an ad in the paper, your friend told you, oh, there's a great hotel, I'm going to Scottsdale, where should I go? Oh, there's a great hotel called the Three Palms. And you looked it up in the phone book or whatever.
So now you type it into Google search.
Exactly. It's completely different now. You don't go to someplace because somebody told you about it, you saw an ad about it, or it's in the phone book. I mean, you look online in Google, Expedia, TripAdvisor, and you're going to see Three Palms, and you're going to see the other Three Palms hotels in these other 6 states, and you might think they're connected. And I think the average person could easily think they're connected. The decision didn't say anything about whether one was, a very fancy, expensive hotel versus a little motel. I mean, that might be a distinction, but I didn't see anything in there about that. It was a registration decision. That's probably
just to clarify, this was not a case where they were actually necessarily suing each other for stealing the name. They were suing for what's called the concurrent use registration, which is the right to divide up the United States, and who got what states.
Yeah, well, the late-coming Florida people wanted the entire United States,
and they got
except
49
for Arizona.
States, and they won.
And the Arizona guy said, "Wait a minute, I have people coming from all over the country to my hotel." And maybe the problem was that some of his testimony wasn't credible. I mean, that often, is the end result of these cases is based on credibility. He seemed to have this sort of thing about, I've been thinking about going out, and I've made all these bids to buy other hotels, and the tribunal didn't really
seem to buy it.
They didn't buy it. They really didn't, and I think that hurt him somewhat. But I don't know. I mean, I still think in that particular milieu of hotels, which people come to nationally,